Oahu, on the island of Oahu, and I'm over on the, where am I, east side of
East
the
side.
island with Kanaloa Bishop, who is going to share with us some valuable information about Hawaiian traditions and about the taro or kalo plant itself. Thank you so much for joining me out here.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Can you just start by telling the story of the origin of this plant?
In Hawaiian culture, we have a large number of what we call akua, yeah, or I guess in English you would call them gods, yeah. So many of them, and
So like deities.
deities, yeah, I guess so, deities. And so this particular mo'olelo, you got to understand that the names that I'm gonna give are not where it starts. There's a progression. It's really a genealogy. Yeah, it's a genealogy. So
So family history.
family history, and it works its way down to Papa and Wakea, are the two where this mo'olelo is gonna start.
Okay.
Papa and Wakea. But you got to understand that there's a progression. It comes to Papa and Wakea, and then from there it goes on further.
So there's a backstory.
There's a large backstory.
We're starting in the middle.
Kind of starting. Well, if you want to start a little bit earlier than that, you got Hawaiians believed, and this is just to my best understanding. I'm still trying to search this out and figure it out on my own. We believe that we came from darkness, Po, yeah, and birth from Po, where the first things to read the forms of life, and these are all akua again, right? Our kupuna, really, our ancestors, were like the smallest coral polyp. All these small creatures that our kupuna saw in the ocean, the small creatures, yeah, the small fish, the seaweeds, the crustaceans. These are all the things that existed right after darkness, right out of the Po, yeah. And then it's almost, almost can look at it as a way of how we explained evolution almost. Yeah, maybe that's even too far, yeah.
Development.
But going from the ocean creatures to the plants on land, to the larger animals that our kupuna in Hawaii knew, right? You gotta remember that this is before any kind of introduced species came to Hawaii.
Right.
Yeah. So just mea Hawaii, as we like to call them, just the things of Hawaii. And so eventually we get to Papa and Wakea. Papa is female, and this is our Papa, yeah. This flat land that we're now sitting on. This is Papa, and Wakea is the expansive sky, the akua of up there. So Papa and Wakea, and Papa and Wakea, from what I understand from the mo'olelo, they have a child. They have several children together, and then one of their daughters is actually, they had ho'ohoku kalani, and the lani is what's up here, and hoku is the stars. So if that gives you any feeling as to who ho'ohoku kalani was, she existed up on this upper realm too, yeah, up there. And then Wakea, yeah, up there, Wakea and Ho'ohoku Kalani had a mating. And out of the first mating between Wakea and Ho'ohoku Kalani came a stillbirth. Yeah. I heard one uncle say, Keiki alu alu, a baby was born, and I believe there was no life, yeah. And so what do parents do when they have this? So the story goes that Ho'ohoku Kalani was very sad, of course, and mourned and took the stillborn baby and buried it next to the house, and so we can still continue to take care of our family, really, yeah. And so buried the stillborn there, and
In Papa.
Yeah, I guess so. In Papa, next to the hale where they live. And you get tears as a mother that would have to deal with a situation. And as I'm imagining it, she'd be crying over the place where she buried her stillborn baby. And sometime later, up comes a taro plant. Yeah.
Also called.
And so the name that was given to this firstborn between Wakea and Ho'ohoku Kalani is Haloa Nakalau Kapalili.
Wow.
Haloa Nakalau Kapalili. And that's our taro plant, yeah. Haloa Nakalau Kapalili. And then the story goes on that Wakea and Ho'ohoku Kalani had another mating, and the very next mating was the first Hawaiian man, and his name was Haloa, named after the older brother who was the taro plant. So a deep familial relationship between the taro and the Hawaiian people. Familial, yeah, and so the taro is the older brother, and the Kanaka, yeah, the Hawaiian people are the younger brother. So, we talk about relationships between older and younger siblings. This is kind of the foundation between, of...
And this is the elder sibling.
And this is the elder sibling, yeah.
The teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet, so you said also, though, that these plants were not growing on this land initially. They were brought here from other parts of the South Pacific?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, so that's talking towards the migration of Polynesians across the Pacific, and the Kalo came with them here. Where this story fits in with the migration, I'm not really sure.
But it's still the same people, so it's
Still the same people, yeah. But if we really start to embrace this this mo'olelo, then we know that this story took place in Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so we just go off of that.
And so it has become, how central to the culture?
More and more we're coming back to it. Yeah, as a people, as Hawaiian people.
When do you feel like it shifted, that this was something that was not only a part of the deity complex, I'm just going to use that
When
word.
it shifted, I'm pretty sure. So this is straight spirituality, yeah, that we're talking. So the missionaries would have probably had a lot to do with it shifting, bringing Christianity, and
so that it becomes just a plant.
If you can look at, I'm not a religion expert, but the differences, how Christians viewed the world and how Kanaka Hawaiians viewed the world. Lots of differences and lots of struggles between the two. And so Christianity eventually becoming very strong in Hawaii eroded, I guess, the Kanaka view.
And is there, so was this a food? Well, tell how it's consumed. Tell all the ways that it's used, not just eaten, right? Because it's used for other things. Is it the leaf?
Yeah, the whole plant is edible.
Yeah. But unused for other things as well.
Yeah, like you said, it's our food is our medicine. Yeah, so just being able to eat it daily is one way that we use it to stay healthy. Yeah.
And how common is that today, that someone would eat that daily here on these islands?
We had a lot of Chinese come, and Asians, and I'm Chinese myself.
Europeans.
And we like eating rice. We just like eating rice.
Yeah.
So, more and more, I know a few people that really make a good effort to just eat taro or poi. Yeah. I want to say some of them are really strict on it too, where they're like, they don't eat rice. They just eat taro
Yeah.
and poi. Yeah.
But for the most part, it's been displaced by rice, by white flour, by
And then, you
all
know,
the variety of things that
well,
came,
and plus
right?
too, the availability of the other foods is way, you know, they're way more available to us than kalo and poi.
Like how many hours does it take to make poi from kalo?
It's quite a process.
Right.
Yeah. And so, you know, to turn on the rice cooker is way faster.
To go down and buy some bread.
You go buy the
get
bag
some
rice,
cereal,
wash,
Yeah.
turn it on,
Yeah.
and then you got rice, right? You got your
I
starch.
mean, that's, you know, that's modern day living. And so we're here on a farm that predominantly grows kalo, and it looks like it's a very specific way to grow it. So it can't just grow anywhere. It's not just growing out in the dry ground. What's the process of growing it?
Oh, yeah. So I think that will bring us back to, you know, the story of Papa and Wake again, and having this familial relationship with everything really around us, you know. Not just the living creatures, but even the mountains. You know, Hawaiians believe you know, they're a part of that genealogy. The land is a part of that genealogy. The rivers are a part of that genealogy. The water is a part of that genealogy. So remembering that, so when, you know, almost anything we do, or maybe not today, but in our kupuna's time, anything they did was with that train of thought, where that this is our family, this is our family, that's our family, family, everything is family. And so a lot of care is taken into the planting and the nourishing of the soil before you plant. The water is really important. If you have water that allows you to grow in this style, but even if you lived in a place that you didn't have water, you still were able to grow kalo, just with different techniques.
Okay.
Yeah, but just keeping that familial frame of mind, and that kind of led into how we carried ourselves here in
So
Hawaii.
talk about the water.
Yeah, so the water is, you know, we're here in Waiahole Valley. This is one of the first places that community actually began to fight for water. When the plantations came to Hawaii, the sugar plantations specifically, what they did was they rerouted the water systems, and they did it way in the back of the valley. So they built flumes to carry water from these wet areas to a little bit more dry areas. So there's actually some tunnels that go through our mountains right here, and it takes the water that should be coming this way, and it goes through the mountain into the drier sides. I think because sugarcane probably grew better in drier conditions, but also needs lots of water. So they rerouted the water to the other sides of the island, and this is every island pretty much.
Wasn't there something too about, you know, livestock sort of decimated a lot of the native plants, and it lowered the amount of rainfall because you didn't have the same, you know, the root system keeping the water, the vegetation, and that when they cleared an area for sugarcane or even pineapple, let's say, that you don't have, it feels like a terrarium here, like what we used to build as kids. You know, you put all these plants and you put a dome over it, and it rains in there. The island feels like that to me. And if you don't, and it's raining over here, but not right there. You know, and it really depends on the vegetation as to the rainfall. So if they decimated it somewhat.
Yeah, so that really affected our ability to grow taro, because although it will grow really well in the arid areas with the right care and intention into creating a healthy farm, I guess you would call it, but really thrives in these wet valleys. The taro really thrives in the wet valleys, and so by removing the water, and there's stories of streams just drying up
Yeah.
and families not being able to plant how they've planted for generations, not being able to farm with an abundance of water.
The water just disappeared.
Disappeared.
Just
Yeah,
gone.
disappeared.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, this water that we're hearing right here, one day just stops.
And you don't know why.
Well, eventually you figured it out, right?
Right.
That they're moving the water
But
to other
initially-
places. Yeah, there's probably lots of pain, you know, in seeing the water stop.
And so you've fought for that to come back. That has changed. now.
We're continuing to fight. Yeah, they're still taking a lot of water, but they've given some back to the stream. But this is one of the valleys where that all began. Some of the community here, I think it started in the 60s, began really questioning why the water's still going that way. How come we don't have water here for the farmers here? Small farmers, right? We're not talking big plantation style farming. We're just, nice few acre farms for our families.
Right.
Knowing that this was also happening all around our islands. So really this valley kind of took lead in starting that battle, I guess you can say, for the return of the water to its natural streams and its natural flow.
Right. So let's just consider a moment. We're talking about this plant that is conventionally called taro, kalo, that has a complex of carbohydrates that is satiating and nourishing, that can be baby's first food, right, when it's made into poi.
Yeah.
Like it's something that is, just like central to a culture and is very balancing and has this alkalinity to it that feeds your microbiome and helps keep you healthy from the inside and out. And the water for this is being shunted to another side of the island to grow sugarcane, which if you're just juicing sugarcane, that's a part of your whole diet, that's one thing. But to then dry and process and bleach those crystals and not only ship them all off island for a world demand for sugar, but also put them in foods here that you then, it's not as simple as this, but it would have been, oh, don't worry that you don't have your kalo, because here you can have some cereal, here you can have some bread, here you can have some candies, here you can sweeten your rice and make rice puddings, and you can, all of a sudden the sugar is introduced in a refined state. And so it's even more decimating than just removing the water from kalo farming. It totally shifts what people eat. Once you introduce sugar, that's a bomb. Literally, it's like dropping a bomb on what people will eat. And getting them to go back to a traditional food is a fight.
Yeah. Sure.
They may not even have the mental state of mind to go back to that food. Sugar is an addictive substance.
Right.
Is this an addictive
Yeah.
substance?
For some of us, it is. but
like
then
a
it's the
comfort food, like home.
spirituality thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
I don't think
No, not
physiologically
Yeah.
addicting, but
Exactly.
there's a few they call them terrorists.
Terrorists.
Yeah.
So the water's taken. That's the first thing that happened, and then even once you get some of that water back, how does the typical person decide to grow kalo? What do they need? They need land first.
Yeah.
What are the issues around land ownership by people who actually want to grow kalo there?
Yeah. Well, if you look at kalo, it's a year, to harvest. So you plant and then it's a year until you harvest. So it's
One harvest a year.
Yeah, it's not something you can really pump out. You need a lot of space to be able to grow. If you're just feeding your family, you don't need much space. But if you want to talk about feeding the rest of our community as a farmer, then you need some space to feed your family. And then you need that much more space to feed that many more families, right?
Is there a season, or can you rotate? Can you plant this one and then 2 months later plant that one and then keep going?
Yeah, well, Hawaii has a wet season and a dry season,
So water
basically.
availability.
Well, it has to do with weather patterns. Not water availability, but maybe just the amount of sunlight that we get changes throughout the year.
Oh,
And
because
so
this
there
can
was,
rot, right? If it gets the wrong temperature.
yeah,
and-
yeah.
Okay.
But you know, like so for example, when we start reaching like November, December, those might not be ideal times to be planting kalo. Yeah, to be planting the kalo. Uh, we still did it probably, but we had that during that time of the year. That was what we called makahiki. That was our makahiki season. And at that point, you know, especially, you know, the weather's a lot rougher. It's rainier, more days out of the, you know, out of that season than sunnier. And so that was more of a period of rest, and to really take in that abundance that was worked so hard for the previous months.
Right.
To really just to be able to sit there and really celebrate the abundance that was provided over the, you know, those summer months and spring and summer.
But you do need a fair amount of land to be able to.
So exactly, to be able to grow kalo, you need large open spaces and water. And so when you look at Hawaii, and you look at the urbanization that has occurred in the past 100 years, you'll see that a lot of the aina that was used to farm kalo is now aina where the houses are. For obvious reasons, yeah, it's nice, flat, and
Has a
easy
view.
to, yeah. So, so already that precious farmland, I guess you could call it, has already been narrowed just by urbanization. Yeah, and so, you know, the stream comes down, people like put their houses here and all over here, and that's exactly where the taro patches would be.
Because there's these just jagged cliffs here,
right.
and then the rains up here, and the water comes down through these narrow gorges, and then it opens up, and that's like it's like that's where you're driving by. That's where you want your house. You're like, oh, it's beautiful there, right? And then this is the urbanization that happens.
Yeah.
With no thought to how that changes the ecosystem, how that will change what can be grown in those areas, the biodiversity, the effect on probably the health of the water, what flows in the sediment, the silt that comes out of the mountains and into the soil, right?
And to add to that is the fact that it's kind of easy for us to ship food in to Hawaii. So they don't see these real fertile areas as something to hold on to for farming.
Right,
because the food comes, right? Or we hope the food comes.
As long as the planes are flying and the ships are shipping.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, there's information out there that suggests
there's food land.
We have enough food on island to last us a week. For, you know, what I'm trying to say is if the ship doesn't come, we got about a week of food. Yeah. And so that's kind of a dire situation.
Right. And you can't drive somewhere else to get it.
I mean, we could all get on a plane and go somewhere that there's lots of food.
Right.
But we're on one of the most isolated places in the world here in Hawaii. And
with with a loss of indigenous sustainability, with a loss of the sense of balance of like what would we do if. It's not like if you went a week without food, you could just plant some kalo and everybody be okay. That's going to be a year. That's a year. You have to plan ahead for that.
Yeah.
It's a year in the making.
So the ease in which we're now bringing food to Hawaii kind of makes it easier to eat up these spaces with urbanization.
Right. Which brings
it's not
more
as
people.
valuable.
Which puts more demand on the
and
food.
everybody wants to live in Hawaii,
or
right?
visit.
Well, a lot of the visitors want to live.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hon, I wish we could afford a house.
I know.
Yeah, I know. That's so
Everybody does that. And so what about land ownership here for someone who's going to be a farmer?
Okay, so
leasing, for
to be able to farm taro, it's a rough job. Yeah, I mean physically it's rough, but also financially it's super rough.
Okay.
Because you know, the dollar per pound, you know, it's come to that monetary issue, you know, where now you're just growing something that is valued at such and such dollars.
It's not like wheat,
and
where
it's
you can just come through with a
super
machine.
low.
Okay.
It's very, very undervalued as a food. You know, you look at the amount of work the farmer does and what he needs in terms of money to survive and keep his family alive.
And what you have to do to turn it into an edible food.
All of that, you know, you're gonna be probably doing it for another reason than to make money. Yeah.
Because you care. Because you're passionate.
Yeah. Yes.
Because you see the future of food here.
Yep.
Well, let me just ask, why are you, your family, people you know, why are you passionate about, why is your friend Chance passionate about growing this? Why does it matter?
Well, I guess I can just speak for myself. And then just knowing that I'm not actually a taro farmer, my family is.
But you've grown up seeing it.
I've grown up in this environment for a while now. But for myself, it just comes back to Hawaii and all that Hawaii is and all that, you know, that makes Hawaii. You know, the blue skies and the green mountains and the clouds that just go like this every single day.
Thank you.
The streams that come down, the blue oceans, the reefs, and trying to remember that our kupuna saw all of this wonderfulness as ohana, as our family. And so this practice of farming Kalo, who is our brother, really strengthens that sense of Hawaii, and it allows us to be Hawaiian, really, you know.
To be all connected.
To connect in more ways than we even know we can connect in.
And not just to each other, but to everything that you live with.
Exactly.
Right.
Be here in the moment. And
so when you pull up one of these roots, what happens then?
Yeah. So, I mean, and then that's remembering too that the farmer has spent so much time to bring it to that point, right? Like a lot of the times we'll be eating poi or like a hand pounded taro, which we can mix into poi, and it almost seems like the guy pounding the taro gets all the glory, right? Because it's kind of, it's like, oh yeah, I'm pounding taro. Yeah, but really it's the guy that farmed it, the guy that has weeded in the taro patch.
It's like the winemaker versus the wine grower.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I don't know, yeah.
The winemaker
no, but it's really
the name and
the individual that's walked around these Kalo plants for months, making sure the water's right, pulling the weeds and allowing the taro to flourish to bring it to that point.
The nurturing.
Yeah, that's the biggest part
There's nothing to pound.
of being able to eat it. Yeah, is that 1 year or so that the farmer has put into it.
Right.
So the rest is really easy. It's like, a couple hours and you're eating.
Right.
Yeah,
And so as a nutritionist, I'm really excited because you can use the whole plant. I just ate some of the leaves, which is like, it's like a spinach. And so as a spinach, it has all of these things that a leafy green has once you've steamed it. You mentioned like folic acid or folates. These are things the plant's going to make up here in the sunshine.
Yeah.
The root is going to have all these minerals that it gets from the soil.
Right.
A very mineral-rich soil, an elemental soil from volcanic activity.
Yep.
And so this just has to be steamed, the leaf?
Steamed. Yeah, the whole thing's steamed. You can boil it too.
Chop up the stalk?
Chop up the stalk, wash it, chop it up. And then, hopefully there's some spirituality in that too. Especially if you're a Hawaiian farmer, right?
Brother.
Yeah. Especially if you're a Hawaiian farmer, hopefully there's some pule, some prayer that goes along with it.
And do you save a part of the root for propagation?
Yep. And so
Okay.
that's how the Kalo plant is propagated. We call it huli.
Huli.
So it's a section, it's just a tiny sliver of the Kalo itself, the root corm. Yeah. Tiny sliver of that. So if the Kalo is like this, you just take the very top of it and then a section of the stem. And that's called the huli. Yeah, so you chop the leaves, you chop the edible Kalo, the part, the Kalo. And then you get that middle section, we call that the huli, and that is put back into the soil.
How soon?
So when you harvest, you do your cutting and your preparing of the huli. You want to give it a few days. The huli, you want to just let it rest. so that in the bottom it creates a callus almost, a protective surface where you made the cut, so that when you plant it, it's it doesn't, it doesn't rot.
Get broken down by the microorganisms.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
Yes. There you go. And so the kalo, you steam that, and it has calcium oxalate, which can make your mouth really itchy.
Yeah.
If you don't like somebody, you just you hand them raw kalo, and you tell them to eat that.
And if they don't know better.
Yeah. See? No.
Oh, you don't like it?
Yeah.
Okay, you're not strong
No,
enough
don't do
to
that
be here.
because some people are allergic and they could probably
Yeah.
die. And then this probably really bad.
Wow, and it's hard on the system to get rid
Yeah.
of this.
Sorry.
But
Anyways.
I
So the
make the
kalo,
same choice.
you want to steam it. If we steam it, you want to go about 3 hours
Wow.
to allow for that the oxalate crystals to break down. I think that's what it's called. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's
calcium
it's-
oxalate. Yeah, you want that to break down so that when you eat it, it's not.
Yeah.
Maneo is the word. Yeah.
And
it's
also
not-
later it can make kidney stones in some people
Really?
too. Yeah,
Oh.
anything that's high.
Oh,
Even
yeah.
even these not steamed would do that,
Ah.
you know.
And so the leaf too has
Yeah, like
has that.
chard
So you
and
wanna
stuff like that.
you wanna cook
Rhubarb,
it
these are
well.
things, yeah.
Yep, and then consume it. So after you cook the kalo to turn it into poi, right? You're gonna clean it again. You're gonna take the skin off of it and just kind of get one layer in, and then you got a nice clean kalo that you're gonna then mash. You're gonna pound it. You're gonna
Okay.
kui, and then it will become. It'll connect to it. It'll attach itself to its. It'll all come together.
Oh, so there's like an
It'll be
alchemy to
peely,
this
yeah.
pounding. It's you're putting in an energy.
So you can take multiple corms, right? Multiple kalo, and as you begin to mash it, it all congeals together, I guess. It all becomes peely to itself. And then usually, after you're done pounding it, it's really thick because you haven't really added much water to it. And in that thick state, one term we can use is pa'iai.
Okay.
It stays. That's where you can store it for a longer
And it
period of
ferments.
time. Yeah, so you take that pa'iai, the harder version, and you can store it on the side.
Okay.
And then when you're ready to eat it, you would take some of it or all of it and mix it with water. And you mix the water in till you get a consistency that you like to eat it at. So some people like, no, I don't know if anybody really likes runny poi. You add too much
Maybe
water.
babies.
So that's a way to stretch it too, right?
Yeah.
So that,
When
your
times are tough.
your bowl looks fuller.
Yeah.
You add a little more water if you have
Yeah.
more people to feed.
Like any kind of a gruel or anything like that. You make
Sure.
it more thin, more watery.
Yeah, and then when you get that consistency that you like, then that's when you would eat it.
Yeah.
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 And then that's when it also starts to ferment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So more fermentation takes place after you
Once
thin
you
it a
mix
little
it,
bit.
yeah.
Okay.
And then, so I know other cultures had fermented foods.
Yeah.
And
That's very
all the
common.
health benefits that come from that.
So you don't have to refrigerate it. In fact, it's better if you don't.
You wouldn't refrigerate it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when did you?
We didn't have
Yeah. When did
refrigeration.
any of us have refrigerators? Like not that long ago. So what did we do before that? We fermented things. You
But
know?
some of the kupuna, and then when we did have refrigeration, they'd let it ferment, sit on the table until it reached the point where they liked that level of fermentation, I guess. Yeah.
Everybody
That's sour.
likes- some people
That's
like it
their
more
ono.
sour.
That's
some
their
people-
ono. Yeah. That's what they're ono for. And then
Okay.
at that point, that's when you go put them in the fridge.
You want to hold it there.
Yeah, you keep it right there.
Put it in
or
the-
not, or you just let it continue to ferment, and
Yeah.
hopefully you finish it before it gets.
Can you take a little of older, more fermented poi and add it to a newer one? Do you transfer it?
Yeah. We this is another thing that we're trying to do in our own diets is to really have poi available every day.
Auntie's poi is so good. If she gives you some of her
yeah.
poi, can you put it with your poi and
Yeah.
get the same flavor as Auntie's poi? Or
Yeah. Inoculate, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard stories that people do that practice.
Is there anything special about what is used to pound it? And I ask because, I mean, I'm a tourist here, so I'm just reading placards, right? So I read about the ohia, and that the wood from that was used as a pounder both for cloth and for poi, and that this sudden death blight that's happening is limiting the amount of ohia that's being used for all kinds of things, for all kinds of ceremonies and for these paddles and for. But I think some stone pounders. I've seen other wooden. Does it matter in the culture? Is there
I'm sure it does.
The right wood, the right tree, the story of the tree.
I'm sure there's levels of
authenticity or
deepness, I guess you could say. So certain varieties of trees were associated with different akua.
Right.
So if you want to, capture some of that energy, then you would use a certain wood, right?
Certain times of year.
Currently, to my understanding, we like to use, we use introduced woods because it's more available. Fruit trees are good. We use mango wood. Monkey pod makes good papaku'iai, the actual board for pounding it. With a more modern style of pounding taro, we've reached out. We're not as strict as our kupuna probably were with those mana'o.
Right. What about the taroists? Maybe the taroists.
The tarayata purists, there's plenty of those guys out there.
They want to have that.
You gotta use this, or those are good. We like those people. It's good to have that.
The story,
that
it's to keep the tradition, because there's a problem here too, right? With stories being overwritten, history being erased, it not being kept. Language, they tried to decimate the language, at one point, right? And so, they always say the winner writes the history book. Whoever has the written language writes it. Whoever is the person who went somewhere and told the story and got it written down, that becomes the account. So how are people going back and reclaiming a truer history, a more well-rounded?
So a lot of it is in the language for here in Hawaii. A lot of that still does exist. You got to remember too that Hawaiians never had a written language. They didn't write anything down. It was all in mo'olelo, in the stories.
The oral tradition.
The oral tradition.
The dance, the song.
Hula, all of it, and so...
So if people are gone or they lose their language...
So when Hawaiians became literate, which happened really quickly, once they saw books and once they understood the process of reading and writing, they grasped onto it really, really well. They excelled in reading and writing. 98% of our population was literate within a handful of years of seeing a book. They saw a book, I guess they realized the strength in being able to write and send it somewhere and somebody to read it. This transfer of information, I guess. They grasped onto it very, very well. And so, thus began the native Hawaiian, the Hawaiian newspapers. And so at that point, there was tons of information that they wrote in our native language, in Hawaiian. And so this is like the 1800s, right?
So wait, let me back up a second. So you grasped a written language, which was what, English?
Yeah, it probably was English.
But then created a written Hawaiian language, and then... So not only were they literate in English very quickly, they quickly made Hawaiian language written and then developed...
And then they wrote it all down.
That's amazing.
They wrote everything down in Hawaiian newspapers. And there's some famous historians that went around. There's a lot of really amazing people from that time that went around and tried to capture all these stories because the information that was 1,000 generations, right, are all in that stories. And the stories, the story is the story itself, But then there's so many deeper levels of meaning in that story that we don't know because we don't have those, just one
Like a
word
code,
can, yeah,
almost.
it's a code. It's definitely a code. So to be able to capture it and write it down and hopefully, at least the information is there, whether we can understand what the story is saying. We could probably understand, just the story for itself really easily, but to catch all those deeper meanings, that's going to take a lot of time. Yeah, and
So this is a
and then
process ongoing.
yeah, and so for example, if there's a story of farming taro, farming Kalo, the guy that's farming the Kalo is gonna be here. He's gonna know that particular story, and then he's gonna be here, and he thinks of the story, and he sees what's going on, and he thinks of the story, and he sees what's going on, and more of the story reveals itself to the farmer or to the person here doing the practice. But a lot of
As
that
in the original
information is,
understanding.
yeah, and then you start knowing that
Right.
to a deeper level.
Right. We say that, and I studied Ayurvedic medicine, which comes out of the Indus River Valley, whereas Pakistan and India now, and it's traditional medicine that's, I don't know, 5,000 years old, and everything they knew about plants was by spending time with the plants. If you look in the Amazonia and the Amazon rainforest, or in Peru, any of the shamans, shamanic plant medicine is about knowing the plant. You have to spend a lifetime
Yeah.
with the
Or
plant.
generations even, yeah.
To truly understand everything that it has to teach you. That it's, to hear the same story over and over again in what is in modern times called indigenous people, you could say original people who knew, people who had the knowledge of the balance, or the knowledge of the earth and the sky and the water and the plants and the balance of all of. It's not, the story you're telling me is new in the details, but the whole concept, it's not so new. So you see this chain of truth. So what can someone like myself do if I'm a sympathizer? Would be somebody who's like pitying you. I don't pity people of Hawaii, but empathizing. How do we walk in your footsteps, but also support without getting in your way, and stand by you as you reclaim this history, remember this history and this culture?
So I guess one thing you could do is try to learn a little bit of it, learn a little bit of the history of Hawaiian people, understand our story, and hopefully try to understand where we're trying to go with it. So, trying to regain our identity as Hawaiians is a process. A lot of it has been erased. There's some of it that's been held on to. Understand where we're coming from, the struggles that we went through to get where we are now, and know that even as a people, we're still trying to figure out the direction that we're trying to go. There's some Hawaiians that are strongly rooted, strongly rooted in our culture. But that's only a handful of us. And then there's a larger Hawaiian population that maybe they're tending to move in this direction. And then there's a population that probably undecided, which way we want to go as Hawaiians. So, within our own people, there's variety. There's variety. The people that are strongly rooted are very passionate, and they're leading us. They're leading the rest of us, and a lot of us really like what we're hearing from them. This is us. This is who we are. These people that really understand it are sharing that information with us, and we're holding on to that. We're like, some of us are just grabbing it as fast as we can and trying to connect to our kupuna, our ancestors. And when we can understand how our kupuna went about things, and the values that they had. When we can understand that here and today and use that understanding to guide our direction, it's a long process for us to go through. So just know that we're going through it, as a people. There's a large variety of what's happening right now.
And so remembering, reclaiming, reinstilling, teaching the new generation, children teaching children the language, these stories, these methods. When you feel, I mean, do you feel strong as a people right now? Do you feel like that's something that needs to
We're definitely growing. Yeah,
You feel like there's a
we're
movement.
definitely making some headway. Yeah.
And this is important globally. I mean, okay, the permafrost is defrosting. Okay, permafrost, it's defrosting. You've got rainforests just up in flames right now. We've got all over the world, Indonesian rainforest being decimated to grow palm, and you're losing biodiversity of animals and plants like crazy, super fast. So this lack of understanding of the interrelatedness, not just of people one to another, obviously, if we talk about wars, that's one thing, people one to another, but people and their earth, people and their plants, people and their animals, and how all that is, like you said, it's all a family. And so if you're strong as a people and remember why things are done a certain way, right? That can create a change globally as well. It can contribute.
It sure can. I think it could. But I think the story is really specific to Hawaii. But I don't see that as a barrier. I mean, I'm sure everybody has that story. You just got to go back far enough to where that story is for you and your people. Everybody's got that story. You just got to go. Some people got to go back further than others.
Right.
Yeah. We're a few hundred years out of that part of our story.
I mean, I've never been here before, but even what I've observed in the last few days, it feels like a glass house has been built, or a house of cards, in the sense that, like you said earlier, there's a week of food here for everyone, the people who live here and tourists, and if the ship doesn't come in, if the plane doesn't fly in and bring the food, there's not enough kalo for everyone. There's not enough, pig for everyone. There's not enough fish for everyone. And so it is, in fact, quite fragile.
Very fragile. Yeah.
Without understanding how to take care of yourself as an island without import.
Yeah.
So it's crucial.
Critical, super critical. Yeah, I mean, I didn't really make it as critical as it really is, but I mean, there's some guys that freak out. Like, like how there's the terrorists, there's the sustainability-ists, No, they say that word with intensity, and they're really passionate about creating a more sustainable Hawaii.
Right.
And when you think about it, when you think about the Hawaiian population pre-contact, they estimate to be around 1 million people.
Really?
Which is near what we're at now.
Among the islands or on?
All of the islands, 1 million people. Yeah. We're close to it.
Wow.
And to imagine that this many people fed themselves from here.
Yeah.
And so it's possible.
Yeah.
It can be
It was
done.
very highly developed.
We get the sun, we get the rain, all the elements are in place, right? For us to be able to feed ourselves. Look at the ocean, should be really abundant.
It should, and I don't want to overlook what you do on a daily basis, which is fish. What is the word? Aquaculture.
Yeah.
Aquaculture, which is, I didn't realize until you said it, traditional Hawaiian methods of aquaculture.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you just take a minute and talk about the importance of that as a part of the culture as well, another reclamation?
Sure.
That also has to do with water.
So if we follow the water, right, and then in these agricultural systems, the water comes down. Some of it is used to grow this taro, and then it'll go back into the stream. This water just flows through. Some of it leaches down, replenishing aquifers, but then it returns to the stream and it makes its way with still a good amount of nutrients in it. And what our Hawaiian people have created were these Hawaiian fish ponds, which captured some of this fresh water. So you get the fresh water, and then you get the salt water, and we create this richness that we understand now as estuaries, right? But there's an abundance created when you mix the fresh water and the salt water. And by creating fish ponds, we encouraged that abundance by, allowing the waters to mix. We take some of that fresh water, create a pond where there's some amount of circulation, but also there's a moment where the brackish water can just do its magical thing, and then the algae begins to flourish.
So the whole life cycle of
Yes,
the whole food chain, the food chain.
And so what our kupuna did by creating fish ponds was to increase that area where this mixing occurs and where this food chain begins, if you want.
Okay. And then have the easy access to the fish that then grew in that environment.
Yeah, and so the fish would come because of the richness.
So rather than having to go out to sea or to be, you had a more consistent food supply?
Well, remember now we looked at all of our native fish as family. So there was a lot better management of the fish, schools of fish that were on the reef.
So you built houses for them in a sense. You created homes.
Well, what I'm saying is that the ocean was way more abundant than it is today.
Yeah.
Way more abundant. So our fishermen mostly went to the ocean to eat.
Okay.
And so the fish pond was just to add richness, to add extra abundance. We call it Aina Momona, to make it a fat land.
Oh, wow.
And it really, it was almost like a reserve, an area to hold fish. Maybe sometimes the fish migrate from coast to coast, or when they're spawning in the ocean, or when the weather is really rough and you can't get out into the ocean. Now you have a fish pond that's full of fish to eat from. Yeah, but
even the algae, so that even the nutrients that are created that are going to go out into the ocean are going to grow stronger fish out there.
Exactly.
So it's a much bigger idea for the future of we'll create more food here for our family.
Constantly thinking is it in terms of cycles.
Yes, in cycle. That's beautiful. That's incredible. Wow. Kanaloa, thank you.
You're welcome.
So much for your time here and your wisdom, sharing your family's wisdom.
I'm trying to learn it, so just know that it's just my understanding.
Many nights here discussing
It's just my understanding of it, and if you go, there's a lot more really awesome people that you could talk to.
Yeah. Well, I hope I have the opportunity. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Taking
Thank
this
you.
time with us.
Appreciate it.